In September of 2020, Tim Williams joined me for the first episode of this podcast, and we discussed the 1978 movie that started it all and made people believe a man could fly. It's now May of 2024. It's our 100th episode. Tim Williams is with me again, but so is a whole bunch of other people. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss, again, Superman the movie. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. And today is our 100th full review episode, and we are going all the way back to the beginning, to the granddaddy of them all, the one that started all of this that we get to talk about on this show, and that is Superman the movie. That is what Tim and I did for the first episode of Moving Panels, and I thought we should bring it back for the 100th, but I didn't just bring back Tim. I brought as many of my co-hosts who were available. So let's go through the list here.
You really make your guests feel wanted.
Yes. Well, no, I wanted everybody, but these were the ones who were available. I mean, it's hard to get a whole bunch of people together at the same time, even on Google Meet, as we do most of these recordings. But let's go through, let's go round the table, if you will. And we'll start with the one who started it off with me from the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. It's Tim Williams.
Now listen to me. I tell you, boys and girls, whichever one of you gets out is going to wind up with the single most important interview since God talked to Moses.
Just that random Perry White line coming out. There you go. All right, and also joining us is the dapper Southern gent. It's Blake Fowler.
Huge congratulations on 100, Laramy. First of all, I celebrated by watching
Thank you.
Superman the movie for the first time for this. So
it's amazing how I have you on my show so much when you don't watch superhero stuff.
There you go.
If it's not Batman, Blake has not seen it.
I'm guilty as charged. Okay.
Yeah.
I resemble that remark.
All right, next up, one of our favorites from the Pop Culture Roulette podcast. It is Nicholas Pepin.
I was going to Krypton and figured I'd swing by and give this episode a listen.
Going to Krypton with Kal-El?
Yeah, Laramy, yeah. We have things to talk about. Okay,
we'll talk about it. Yeah. Oh, Brando. And then next up, from the wintry north, even here in springtime, we've got Chad Smith.
Hey man, I just wanted to congratulate you too. It's been really fun getting to come on from time to time, but I'm glad you got plenty of good stuff out of it and plenty to go, and it's going to be fun to do this 100th.
Yeah, essentially a podcast based off of hour-long conversations you and I used to have.
Yeah.
Now you just record the conversation.
Yeah. Everyone
if only we knew.
Yeah. And, of course, the voice you just heard is my lovely wife, Bethany.
So how many T's are in bloodletting?
Oh, come on. You're a journalist. How?
Yeah.
How?
She can't spell.
So many issues. All right, never mind.
Like, you can give it to her when she can't spell Krypton. But
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. How do you spell massacre? All right.
And didn't she misspell Brazier?
It's not.
Yeah.
She put a G in it.
No, Z. He says,
Brazil.
There's
no
Z.
There's Z in Brazil.
What?
He says there's no Z in Brazil.
So hold on. Brett. Oh, geez.
Sex maniac profile.
Right, look, 95 Pulitzer Prize winner. What do you bet?
There's no Z in Brazier. Hey, nice job on that.
Brigadier? Yeah.
Yeah. Brigadier?
Brigadier. Brigadoon.
Brigadoon. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. We're just gonna have fun and talk about Superman the movie, and the things we like, the things that we, even though we do, and I think I speak for everybody, we all do think this is one of the greats, and a classic and an iconic movie, but it does have some issues, and we will discuss those as well. But let's just go ahead and do a little bit of our usual and talk about when it was released. It was released December 15th, 1978. So too old for a lot of us. But Tim, did you see it in theaters?
I did not.
Yikes.
Yeah. I was alive then, but no.
How's that bus feel that just ran over you?
It's all right. It's all right.
Oh, the slings and arrows of.
I was 9 months old.
Oh, geez, what is happening? All right, I'm 87, everybody. So that's the year I was born, not my age.
Yeah, I was like, that was clear.
Like, you weren't even old enough to see Batman in theaters.
You are correct, Tim. Yes.
Man. Well, I mean, I wasn't really either by responsible people, so, you know.
Yeah.
But here we are.
So I actually remember that this movie was not released in the U.S. like on anything you could buy forever. It wasn't until like 2001 or something they released it on DVD finally. So my parents had like a massive collection of tapes, but there was no cassette. You could not buy Superman the movie. So my entire memory of seeing it as a kid was the Saturday afternoon, after cartoons were over, a movie would come on reruns. And so I've many, many, many times watched it on a lazy Saturday afternoon growing up.
So that'll bring me to a talking point. Did y'all see it, like Chad's saying, on television? Or, when I say on television, like on a regular station where it had commercials and all that? Or did you see it for the first time on something like HBO or one of those where or rent it or something like that? Like, what was the first way you think you remember seeing Superman?
Max 3 days ago.
Maybe that question wasn't for you, Blake.
I just want to go and get my answer out of the way, Tim. I was like, let me go ahead and step out of this one.
I was young, so I don't know if it wasn't available. I don't know how I saw it because we didn't have cable until '96. So I don't know, but I remember my dad being a fan of it. So I know we saw it.
Yeah.
Like, this was not like when I rewatched it a week or so ago so I could have it memory refreshed. It wasn't the first time I had seen it. I saw it a long time ago, before Blake was born.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the original episode, Laramy, but like I have more memories of Superman 2, and I know I saw that a lot on HBO, but honestly I don't remember when I saw the first Superman for the first time. I don't know if they re-released it in theaters, and maybe I saw it in the theater back then. No, Chad's only, that's not possible. Okay.
No, they almost did. They even made a trailer for it, and were going to, and then Warner Brothers decided not to. So no one.
Well, so they did, though, because this is where I was leading to with that. They did air it on ABC in February of 1982.
Yeah.
It was part of their ABC Sunday night movie. And this is why I was asking, because this was an extended cut.
Yeah.
This was a 3-hour cut of the movie, where the movie is only like an hour 23, hour 24, or 2 hours 23, 2 hours 24 length movie.
Already too long.
I was like, how did they get Zack Snyder to come back and direct that for the 3 hour cut?
No, 3 hours, not 4.
Oh, sorry, the extra hour there.
Yeah. And it actually, again, it was Sunday night movie, but it ran 2 nights, which forced ABC to create a Monday night movie for them to show the second night. But I ask because I'm curious, does anybody know or think they remember when they watched this years ago? I know Blake didn't, because if he watched it on Max. But does anybody remember the scene of Superman going through all the traps that Luthor laid out when he's headed to his hideout?
So don't ask me how I know this, but I saw it on WGN, the cable before you had cable.
Hey, I am old enough to know WGN.
Yeah.
Okay, I do. Okay.
And they only played the long cuts of stuff because they made more money on commercials, which FYI is why there was the 3-hour cut for TV to begin with. And so I had never seen the theatrical cut until I was an adult, basically. And you could buy it on DVD. Laramy, question for you. Have you ever seen the international cut?
Ooh.
I'm sure I have.
So the international, same thing. They did the same thing for the European and Australian market, made a long cut for commercial properties, but it has different scenes. So you get like a weird scene where while Hoover Dam is breaking, he's saving Jimmy and flies toward the dam carrying Jimmy Olsen, who's taking pictures of it like while it's happening and stuff. But you can tell as an adult, anyways. Like you can tell which scenes are edits because they're not polished. Like they look out of place.
That would actually make the movie more interesting, in my opinion, and a little more cohesive. You're talking about these traps he had to go through to get to Luther.
Yeah,
he seemed to have gotten to Luther way too easily, in my opinion. So the traps themselves would make a lot more sense.
Too easily, not.
Okay, there's a lot.
Literally everything.
Whatever.
Okay,
literally everything.
If you're gonna go there, the changing clothes midair, a la The Flash,
like
really.
I told Bethany as we were watching it, like that's one of the things I don't like.
Yeah,
I'm okay when he does the revolving door.
Sure, that's
like
great.
I'm okay with that because you could imagine he's changing very quickly and he's just throwing the clothes somewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, the dive when they just do a dissolve fade.
Like he just dove through the outfit head first, like right into the outfit is what it looked like almost. So, good for him. That's talent.
Now I will say, Laramy, so for rewatching it for the podcast today, I did watch the 3-hour version because I had bought a copy of it on Vudu a couple of months ago, and I had not watched the full version. And actually, I enjoyed the longer version. It didn't feel... it feels long in parts. You can tell there's parts that they could have trimmed down.
Yeah.
But it is a pretty coherent, full movie. Like it didn't feel like I felt there was more. They added more like adventure scenes, like him saving people kind of in the middle that I'm sure they cut because they felt like it was too redundant. But it's still like good, pretty decent pacing. It is a slow starter though. Like even the original, it takes a while for things to kind of really move.
Well. And see, it's different watching it now. Imagine watching it in 1978.
Right.
And you see that opening scene with Zod and the trial, and you see what happens. And the fact that there's no payoff to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In this movie.
I always forget that's how this one begins.
Yeah. I was waiting for Zod to come back. I thought that was going to be the thing at the end,
That was the original plan. Like, that was Donner's plan, was for the first movie to end with a cliffhanger of seeing that the missile that he threw into space is the one that frees Zod and his gang, and that was going to be the cliffhanger, but they decided to change that, but they didn't change the open because I guess they figured, well, we'll still need this when we do Superman 2. But yeah, you got to think when you're watching it in 1978 and you're just going, what is the point? What was the point of that trial at the beginning?
Yeah.
So
I will say this though, like what's interesting, like Bethany was saying, it's too long of a movie and that sort of thing. When you compare it to the super long comic book movies we have today, its pace holds up really well. Like there's not much dead space in Superman. There's which doubly is impressive when you think about that. There's not really a fight.
No,
there's no 8-minute long fights that take up that eat up.
Superman doesn't punch anybody.
No. Instead, it's 2 hours of exposition.
Okay, thank you, Bethany.
30 minutes.
There it is. There's a lot of exposition.
Well, there's a good 30 minutes of opening credits that really.
Bethany and I looked. It is 6.5 minutes until they start the Krypton.
I forgot when movies did that. Used to. I think that was pretty much the industry standard. You did all your credits.
All the credits
up front.
Most of the credits were at the beginning.
A ton of exposition,
so and then actually watch them.
Yeah, and then even the action scenes seemed a little redundant at a certain point. It was kind of a lot of the same thing over and over to me.
Oh, I didn't say the pace pays off. I just
I'm saying I got you. I'm with you. I'm with you on the pace part. Like a 2 hour and 11-minute movie ish, I think it was. Like that's not a super long, for lack of a better adjective, there movie. But there were parts that it could have been an hour 45, and I think I'd have been. I'm kind
of mad that Max doesn't have the 3 hour cut because I'd like to watch that.
I wouldn't mind seeing.
I was interested when I pulled it up on Max because that's how we watched too. Even though I own all the versions of it, but
I'm telling you, you can find
I was curious too because
version.
usually you can go over to like extras or something and there might be a different alternate version. But yeah, they don't have anything. But
they might not own the rights to it.
Yeah, that's what I'm
True.
thinking.
True.
Or the Salkinds are asking way too much for the rights.
No, not those guys.
Yeah, not the Salkinds. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. I know Tim and I talked about this in the first episode. The fact you don't see Superman until 45 minutes into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's like Chad's saying, it's a great, essentially a 3-act story. Because you've got Act 1, the 20 so minutes in Krypton, then you got Act 2, the 20 to 30 minutes in Smallville, and then you get the full 2 hours.
But I'll say this, especially because the Krypton stuff doesn't really pay off in this movie. The Krypton part could have been a lot shorter. I enjoyed the Smallville stuff. That really establishes who Clark Kent is and who he is, where his belief systems lie. You cared about those characters a lot more because you didn't have Marlon Brando phoning it in the whole time. And then the story really gets started after he leaves Smallville.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when the movie really starts to pick up in a way that's enjoyable.
Sure.
Whereas I feel like the Krypton part, it really loses me.
So I will say this though, it is weird that we go from Smallville to him living as the duplicitous Clark Kent and a fully formed Superman.
Yeah.
Like
he underwent 12 Earth years of training through space and time.
No,
right?
I'm just meaning there is no explanation of that he has taken on the Superman persona.
Yeah, how he
understands how he wants to work in the world as Superman. All of that. That's just done
because the teenage Clark we meet,
is
not the Clark we end up with.
Right.
So it's not even showing that he's Clark who just happens to be Superman.
And they really shouldn't have dubbed Christopher Reeves over that. It doesn't work well.
Okay, I was wondering if I was mishearing, because again, so I'm hearing impaired. I thought maybe I was mishearing things, but okay, that's my.
And since we're on the subject of things we didn't need to see, the little boy didn't need to be naked. I'm just gonna say
okay.
No, he doesn't.
It says
he doesn't.
It says it's rated PG. Okay.
This was 1978. So there wasn't no PG-13.
Full child nudity, and then Tessmacher is in the water in what is essentially a sheer top. Okay, let's just call it what it is. This is not PG,
but PG-13 didn't exist until Tim help me out. 86,
85,
85.
Rated R didn't it? X rated.
But yeah,
I mean, we can also talk about the fact that Larry Hagman sexually assaults Miss Tessmacher.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Laramy goes like, she just kissed Superman. She took advantage of him. And I was like, you said nothing when they were assaulting her on the side of the road. They're like, oh no, this poor woman might be dead. Here, let's rub her boobies.
He said massage her chest and give her mouth to mouth. I wouldn't ask my men to do anything I'm not prepared to do on my own. I was like, woof, rough stuff. There
were a lot of moments in this movie where I was like, tell me your movie's made in the 70s without telling me your movie's made in the 70s.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
The other one was smoking cars at the front of the train, right? Like, it's like, okay, there's another sign.
The weird, like, psychedelic moment when he's learning about Krypton from
a super weird
thing.
So I am a little upset I didn't get to spend more time with Ma and Pa Kent. I really dig in my comic book movies, in my movies in general, like relationships and seeing those unfold and
that's
watching
such an
them build.
important one.
And for that one, it's so massive, and it's like, so a meteorite spaceship falling from Earth didn't give Pa Kent a heart attack, but walking up his driveway does. Like, that's how we lose him. That's how you're going to off him. And I don't get any more screen time.
The slight jog that he made for 10 feet is what did it.
But I wanted more time.
Jogging kills.
I wanted more time. That's why I stay inside, Bethany. I wanted more time with that relationship and to watch it grow.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the death doesn't pay off. I'm like, why is he so despondent? He never saw his Earth father anyways. What does it matter?
That is super frustrating to me, as Laramy's pointed out several times on this podcast.
Right.
That this is the first time you see that happening. It's not from the source material. And they really did try to honor the source material for the majority of the movie. You see that over and over again. But then they kill him off, and there is no real payoff to it either. You don't get any forward movement out of it because of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Bethany and I were actually discussing, we were watching it, like, who is the best Jonathan Kent through the movies and the TV shows.
What'd you land on?
Well, immediately when Bethany asked me, I said, well, it's not Kevin Costner. But that's my thing. Yeah, I would say John Schneider, but to Blake's point, it's because we got to have that relationship develop.
Sure. Right.
Glenn Ford would have been a great Jonathan Kent if we probably got to see more of him.
That is the thing, is he does a great job with the little bit of time that he does have. But I think we have this benefit of, we've all been, or most of us have been exposed to Smallville. And Smallville does a much better job of telling the full story of Clark Kent becoming Superman and the journey that he goes. And so I feel like because we have that, it makes the Superman movies origin story a little more lackluster, I would say.
And that certainly makes sense. That again, as we've all said, the longer you're with someone, the better relationship that's going to build, and the better the payoff is going to be in the end. I guess my question is, canonically, does Jonathan Kent die at some point in time? Is that the impetus for him becoming Superman? So, like, this is, as you said,
it was made for the movie.
For this, and now it's become tropish a little bit to have him pass away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the Death of Superman storyline, there is an issue where Jonathan has a heart attack.
Okay.
The comic is about a journey he takes with Clark in the afterlife.
Oh, okay.
But then he returns back. And then he's telling Martha, I saw our boy. So no, he's still alive, which, the Dean Cain version of Superman had a living.
Yes. Cain? Sorry.
Now that is the Superman that I grew up on. So that's who I first think of when I think of Superman. That's probably blasphemous, but sorry.
It is. So sorry.
My bad. Like that's my first memory, my real memory of Superman. Speaking of things we're sorry about, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. I just kind of want to get into that real quick. It makes Jared Leto's Joker look bearable. I'm just going to put that out there.
Really?
Yes, no. I did not care for it at all.
Is that just because he refused to shave his head?
Also, yes, as a bald man, Nicholas.
Although did agree to shave his mustache.
Yeah. I did read that. I did a little bit of research. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I think of my Lex Luthor as an actual genius, and this guy's like a cornball wish.com version of a diabolical genius.
I think we talked about this in the
yes. Like that's it's also the worst world domination plan I've ever heard of.
Well, that's how Trump got started. No, sorry.
I mean,
sorry. We could edit that out if you need to.
But the thing, and I think we talked about this in the first episode as well. This was the Lex of the comic. He didn't become this was kind of at the transition point.
He's not as
because he didn't become the billionaire, LexCorp dictator almost like character that he would become until the 80s. So, and that was to kind of meet the times. You think of movies like Wall Street and all that. I mean, he's kind of filling that gap. Before that, he was just a criminal mastermind.
Yeah, but he wasn't like a slimeball pseudo gangster.
Yeah,
that you get in this one. Yeah. And the fact that like Gene Hackman wouldn't even cut his hair, apparently, much less like he doesn't even look clean cut like the guy who would be making real estate deals that this occurred to.
Yep.
I don't know. Anyways,
it amazes me that it must have been in the 70s or just in that era of movie making where like Gene Hackman was like, no, I'm not going to cut my hair, and Marlon Brando was like, read a script. Screw that noise.
And they said, "You're hired."
Everyone else
say action. I'll read it. I'll read it when the camera.
Everyone else is literally saying Krypton around him, and he's like, "Nope, I'm going to stick with Krypton."
This is the hill I'm going to die on.
What is the correct pronunciation of Superman's real name? Somebody.
Kal-El.
Kal-El. Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, not Kal-El.
Kal-El.
He literally said that he wanted to play it like a bran muffin.
Like a bagel.
Bagel, yeah.
Yeah.
Your
It was a bagel. Yeah.
That was his pitch when they had already hired him, by the way. And his pitch to how he's going to play the role is a bagel. And trying to be respectful to one of the greatest living actors, somebody's like, can you elaborate a little more? He's like, well, nobody's seen a Kryptonian before. Who's to say they're not bagels? I'm going to play it like a bagel.
He also isn't part of that also a bagel or like a green suitcase? Like there's another part to that
bizarre.
where he says,
he's
a bizarre one.
Mm-hmm.
If he wasn't connected to the material, he just wanted to do whatever he wanted.
He was there for a paycheck,
of course,
and he was ready to go home.
I'm only here so I don't get fined, is what he was doing.
Yeah.
So we don't speak too ill of the dead. He does come around, though, through the shooting process, and eventually manages to read the whole script. And and became... His excuse, he told Terrence Stamp that the reason he didn't read the whole script was that he needed the money, and what if it sucks? Like, that was his... So after Terrence Stamp's like, no, it's pretty good, man. He finally goes back and reads it, and then he turns into this like marketing genius and is the guy who's stumping for the movie all over the place. So it's a super bizarre turnaround. Unfortunately, he'd already filmed a lot of his scenes by the time he got around to doing that.
Scenes,
So,
it's very bagely of him.
The extended
but
version.
Now that you say it.
I will say the extended version does have an extra Brando scene just for you. He has a conversation with, excuse me, he has a conversation with Clark after one of the rescue attempts in the Fortress of Solitude. So
I can probably do without it, but thanks, Tim. That's fine. Yeah.
Since we're talking about actors, let's talk about the main guy. Let's talk about Christopher Reeve. I'm pretty sure I can probably say Blake may be the exception here, but does everybody agree Christopher Reeve is the bar? That he is the standard?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it changed the way comic book artists drew Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Blake's revving up.
So I want to make one statement. Obviously, my Supermen are different than everybody's. I was not sold on Christopher Reeve as the movie started. There's a scene where he's in Lois's apartment. He's got his glasses on. He's hunched over. He takes the glasses off, stands up, deep voice, and I was like, I can believe that's two different people.
He is two different people.
I can buy in that scene alone, that moment of transformation with no special effects, no wizardry or witchcraft of any kind, just a man and his posture convincing me that he's two different people. The movie itself is up and down. It's a roller coaster for me. His performance saves whatever good of it that there is. 100%.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean he does. He plays two different characters, three if you count him also playing Jeff East. But
I thought you were going to say him voice acting himself as a child, but
well, that's what I'm talking about. That was the actor Jeff East.
Yeah.
Which I didn't bring this up when we mentioned it. They did not like Jeff East did not like that because he didn't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you could tell this, Blake, too. They actually had also put him in prosthetics.
I was like, is that a hairpiece and prosthetics?
To make him resemble resemble Christopher Reeve as best they could.
It didn't work, but a great try, for effort.
You can tell in a couple of scenes though.
Oh yeah, you can.
Oh yeah, it doesn't. The color doesn't match.
I did feel a little bad for him going to the premiere and then like watching it. Like you've got probably a couple family members or you've told, and then they're like, "That's not you talking."
That's not your voice.
They didn't finding out like while you're watching the movie for the first time that you've been edited must have been pretty terrible.
Yeah, I was like, it's either leprosy or a prosthetic nose. It was bad. It wasn't great.
So a bizarre connection to that. The other famous time this happened was David Prowse as Darth Vader did not know that they took somebody else to voice act for Vader. And he's the one that gets Christopher Reeves into shape to play Superman.
Wow.
Right.
So, bizarre connection there.
Superman was trained by Darth Vader.
That's right.
Oh, man.
Yeah. In fact, he trained him so well that Christopher Reeve's body changed enough that they had to go back and reshoot earlier shots because he looked different in the suit. But I want to run through this list. I found a whole bunch of rumored actors. I'm not going to say any of this is actually true, but because I found multiple different lists. Rumored actors that were considered for the role of Superman, maybe through the years, because I can't believe all of these were in 1970s. But I'm going to run through the list, and then we can talk about whoever we want to talk about. Al Pacino, James Caan, Christopher Walken, Steve McQueen, Clint Eastwood, Robert Redford, John Voight, Warren Beatty, Burt Reynolds, Nick Nolte, Jeff Bridges, get ready for this one, Muhammad Ali,
Yeah, I'd heard that.
Dustin Hoffman, who would actually turn down the role of Lex Luthor, and then Paul Newman, who is the only one I can find of that list who was actually offered the role, but he turned it down. I then also found out that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone were actually campaigning to get the role,
Right.
but Marlon Brando, who had a say in the casting, rejected both of them. Any of those just scream out to you?
Redford would be the only one I would see doing it.
Redford and Paul Newman.
Or Newman.
At
Paul
that
Newman, I
time
could see
period,
it.
like, both of those could have worked. But
Maybe James Caan.
The problem I have with this list is that I see all of these men as old men
Yeah.
because that's where I know them from now.
Yeah.
I have a hard time going back and looking at them in the 70s. But some of them, Christopher Walken, would have been a terrible choice even in 1978.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one that stands out to me only because it's the alternate version that I would pay to see, knowing how terrible it would be, just for kicks and giggles. I want to see Burt Reynolds as
that's the one that made me laugh.
Because
I want to see Muhammad Ali.
you
for
know
the same reason.
because you know Burt Reynolds also would have refused to shave his mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
He wears the Smokey and the
he would
Bandit
have
hat
Right.
See, he's got the Santa Claus syndrome. He would have tried to shave it. It just would have immediately grown back.
Oh, God.
And if you were a big SNL fan in the 90s, you're seeing it as
Norm
Macdonald
Macdonald.
doing
Yeah.
it.
That's the only way I'm seeing the Burt Reynolds Superman right now is Norm Macdonald
That's
on Celebrity
With the
Jeopardy.
big yellow foam hat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Just smacking gum.
Mhm.
Yeah. Check out this hat I found. Yeah.
Hey, it's funny.
It's funny. It's funny.
Yep. It's comically big.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently they screen tested like 200 people. And I say people specifically because not even all of them were actors. Like, one of the producer's wives, pretty famously, was getting her hair cut. Oh, no, dentist. She's at the dentist, and she's like, he's the dude. So there is a screen test. You can find it. It's in a couple of the documentaries about the making of the movie and everything. Mm-hmm. Her dentist screen tested to be Superman. So
It's one of the Salkinds dentists. Yeah.
The Salkinds and Richard Donner called me and told me they hadn't found a satisfying answer to Superman.
I mean, we were going completely nuts to get the right guy.
That's when we began the search. We began to move down the ladder.
We even tested the dentist of my first ex-wife.
Ilya Salkind's wife had gone to the dentist the day before. And while she was sitting there having her teeth repaired, she looked up into the eyes of the dentist and said, "My God, it's Clark Kent." I mean, this is how bizarre and how extreme and how desperate we were to find Superman. He tested for the part.
It's all over, Luther. You're coming with me.
It's too late. The rocket is already on its way, and even you can't fly fast enough to stop it.
I won't have to fly anywhere, not after you tell me where the controls are.
Controls? Who's got controls?
I've traced the signals to this room. Now you tell me.
I don't know where they are, I swear.
Don't force me to do humanity a favor. Overblown, deluded creep.
Hey,
I mean,
but again, I do like, we talk about how much Christopher Reeve is this character, but he was an unknown at this time. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why he gets third billing. They had to promote the movie with Brando and Hackman.
Yeah, he was a stage actor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you put the name Christopher Reeve up there at the time, I don't know who that is. So, yeah. But he is Superman. I don't care.
Yeah.
I agree with you in that. He does such a really good job of very subtly going from Superman to Clark Kent and back and forth. And even like that moment where they're on the street and he gets shot and he does I just fainted. Yeah. And the like quick look at the bullet and you just see that different person for like a whole second and then he throws it off and he's back to being, the mild-mannered reporter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let me ask Blake this. Did you notice that his hair's part differently depending on which character he plays?
Yep. I thought that was a cool little touch.
Yeah. Clark's hair's parted one way and Superman's hair's parted the other way.
Makes a world of difference. Like that. Yeah, the glasses and the hair part. Again, I wasn't sold until that one scene, but then I started looking a little more closely. I did watch it twice in preparation for this. So yeah, some cool little spots and stuff that they did to make that more believable, that people wouldn't recognize him.
You just used the word believable. Let's get into that.
Any other part of the movie I'm not in on. But anyway.
Well, because that was one of Richard Donner's big pushes. Mm-hmm. That was the reason why the tagline is "You'll believe a man can fly." He wanted the movie to feel as real as it could, being about this alien superhero. And I think for 1978, I think he achieved it really well.
For the times. Yep.
Yeah, it's not too campy. Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying there's not camp in it, but it's not too campy.
Yeah, there's a few
but
scenes.
it's not overly effect heavy either. Like there's a lot of practical effects, which is what really makes this for me. The football kick when he's a teenager. If you look into that was done with an air cannon being buried under the ground, and they just launch the football. Okay. And of course, the way they edit, you don't get to see that happen. But I mean, it's a lot of people now would think, oh, that's just a computer
CGI football, yeah,
CGI football. But that was real, and the flying rig they created, because they tried several different ways to make
they used several
Reeves fly. Yeah, but I mean, that on top of Reeves himself being, so fluid in his movement.
Yeah.
I mean, it again, 1978, even for some of the scenes that are clearly, blue screen, green screen, whatever they were using and all that, it's still very believable to look at. And then the scenes where they have him fly at like street level. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so smooth. Mm-hmm. The way
I think my favorite is when he, it's hard, I'm motioning to you listeners, so this doesn't really work to the rest of you. But he flies up and kind of in a semicircle around a couple of skyscrapers, and you see the lights on the skyscraper change with the lights on the actor and everything. But you're absolutely right. Like, I dare you to find somebody who flies better. The landings and takeoffs can be a little clunky. Like, my least favorite is actually the end when he's at the prison after he's dropped off our crime group, and he goes to leave, and it's just awkward. It looks weird. But despite a handful of circumstances, he was fully in it. Like, Christopher clearly took the assignment very seriously and provided an athleticism to that you honestly haven't really seen since. It's hard to find a human flying that looks better. And yeah, I mean, we're still talking 1970s technology, so the background doesn't always look perfect, that sort of thing, but it's pretty incredible.
The perspective sometimes, like his size versus some of the other things doesn't quite match.
I will say, though, for a movie that was made in 77, 78, when they were making it, it holds up a lot better than a lot of the movies I've watched for Tim.
The 80s,
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, if you told me that those effects were done in 1995 and I didn't know better, I'd believe you.
Biggest budget up until that time for a film, correct?
Yes.
55 million?
Yes, in fact, biggest budget. And then when it was released, it was the best opening day for Warner Brothers. It was the best opening weekend for Warner Brothers. It was it was released December 15th. It set a record for the best week before Christmas, because they detail those records. Mm-hmm. It was the best week of Christmas in the box office. And then it was the highest grossing film of 1978, which it came out at the end of 1978. Right. So
it made a lot of money in those 3 weeks.
And it was the best Warner Brothers opening ever.
Wow.
I mean, this was a big movie, and it still holds as far as you ask me. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about, because we've hit a lot of stuff in the movie. Let's talk about favorite scenes. Like, what are scenes that just stick in your mind when you think about Superman the movie?
Yeah. I don't know about favorite scenes that stick out to me. The first thing that sticks out to me is when him as a toddler, I guess, lifts the car up in front of the Kents.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
A pretty cool shot.
That is. I think that's one of those scenes that I remember as a kid. Like, that really stood out to me. Thankfully, he was partially clothed at that point, so I was always thankful for that. Another scene that I remember as a kid really liking was when he's laying and becoming the train tracks while the train is going over the San Andreas Fault. Like, that's a vivid scene that I remember from a kid. So that whole end sequence, I'm not, going back now, like him causing the Earth to turn back time is, still makes me kind of chuckle some. But as a kid, it was pretty cool. That was, totally believable. That's how you do time travel. You just make the Earth go in the opposite direction for a few minutes.
I mean, that's the big one for me, turning back time. I mean, I just... Yeah, I enjoy the Gene Hackman Otis Toole, like him just just the back and forth between those two guys.
Yeah.
I mean, even though Gene Hackman is not necessarily the best Lex Luthor, he's Gene Hackman.
Better than Spacey.
Well, I mean, I thought we weren't going to talk about that movie. You said there would be no math. But I mean, overall, I mean, it's one of those movies that, because I have not watched it in so long, like some of it was a little fresh, but it was. I mean, there are scenes that definitely stick out. The helicopter, the helicopter rescue. Him kind of like stepping into the role of Superman for the first time, and then just going on a tear of like saving a kitten from a tree. Like that, you know what? That's one of my favorite scenes. He takes the kitten out of the tree, hands it to the little girl, and then you hear the little girl going, "Mama, there was a man. He just handed me the cat from the tree."
He swooped down. Yeah.
She's like, "Stop
and
lying."
Then you hear the child get slapped.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Another tell me the movie is from the 70s without telling me the movie's from the 70s.
I told you not to lie at me. All right, Chad, how about you?
Absolutely. The Lois Lane interview when they're on her patio balcony.
Terrace. This penthouse that a newspaper reporter can afford.
Apparently, she makes big dollars. But the chemistry there is so good. And Chris is so stinking charming. Like his not quite full smile and her believable nervousness and the really terribly written innuendo like between them and the little jokes and stuff. For me, that's the most memorable scene for sure.
I was actually going to say the same thing. That scene where she's interviewing him on the terrace. And it really kind of explains like why she is so charmed by him, why she's so infatuated by him. It's not just because he saved her, but also, he's charming and he's cute and then he flies with her. And then there's the really dumb "can you read my mind?" Yeah, which I think you could have cut out, and that scene would have just truly been perfect. It's just cheesy, but it's fun. And then you were pointing this out that it's one shot.
Yeah.
Like when he flies away, it's one shot. You see him fly off, and then
see Lois
he
walk
walks
back into the apartment, and then
apartment.
Clark comes through the door.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going back to that believability. Like, you see Christopher Reeve as Superman. You get a front, you see his face. He turns around, he flies off. You see him turn the corner. There's no cut. You see Lois turn and go into her apartment, and then Clark is knocking and comes through the door. And I found out the way they did that, and you can kind of tell it if you're looking for it, is Christopher as Superman is actually a projection. Like that was something filmed earlier, and it's a projection of him flying away, and it's really him as Clark for that scene. But it looks cool to give that believability that he flew off and he changed and now he's Clark.
But I think you get just like the perfect full spectrum of him, like both parts in that scene. You get the charmingness of him as Superman, and then you see, the cute little bumbling Clark Kent and him like wrestling with the idea of, do I want to be Superman? Do I want to tell her the truth? Do I want to continue to protect, him wrestling? You see a lot. He does a lot of work in that scene. And I think it's just a really good scene.
All right, and then I saved Blake for last because since this was your first viewing, I'm curious as to what scenes stuck out to you.
Well, first of all, in my research, Lois Lane can afford an apartment like that because she gets paid per grammatical and spelling error, so she is filthy rich.
She was the beta tester for spell check.
Yeah, she was raking in the dough.
Because again, we know that Jimmy Olsen gets paid $40 a week.
Yeah, a week. I was like, hold up now. As a part-time photographer, I was thinking, absolutely not. There is no way. I don't even turn my camera on for $40 at this point.
And clearly, the way that Perry says that,
I was
clearly
like,
the way Perry says that,
like
he thinks it's
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
He thinks he's paying him millions of dollars. So I spoke about probably my favorite scene is the scene everybody keeps referring to, the interview followed by Clark coming in and flying off. It's a great scene. What stood out to me is kind of what Tim brought up, and I did some reading actually. It's a dangerous thing, but sometimes I have to. That the ending is a little divisive among the Superman community, to say the least. It almost ruined the movie for me. That is how they chose to turn back time. I like my superheroes a little jaded and with a little bit of conflict. You shouldn't get everything. You shouldn't get to save the world and the girl.
Yeah.
It's one or the other, and it's cheating the system to not even really time travel. I don't know how that's time travel, but that he could have like gone and found the Phantom Zone and jumped through it in a time portal and come back to another Earth. I'd have bought that more than the backwards thing. But I was just curious as to everybody's opinion on the ending, since we kind of seem to be getting there.
Yeah, my next topic was what did you find that's not so great?
Yeah, that's not so great.
And we can start with the ending. Yeah, so I will say, as much as I will admit it's kind of become an iconic ending, I don't like it.
Okay.
And the thing is that they even throw it in our face right before it happens, of him. I don't 100% know what's going on, but when Jor-El is apparently in the cloud,
everybody's talking to him. Dude, stop.
And he reminds him something that had been said twice already earlier in the movie, by
several
Jor-El,
times, drilled into
was "You are forbidden."
It is forbidden for you to interfere. There's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
All those things I can do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him.
And that would make perfect sense if by doing that there was a major consequence.
Yeah.
There wasn't.
And I know and I know that it was supposed to be releasing General Zod was the big consequence, but again, that didn't happen in this movie. So in this movie, like Blake said, Superman can do whatever he wants and there's no consequence. And I agree. I have a problem with that. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's not a good ending. It's clearly shoehorned in several different ways. One of the things that is jarring to me, and I remember even thinking this like as a child, that the special effects on so much of the movie are so good, and then the rocks collapsing in front of the dam and everything is so bad. Like and if you look into it, the guy who was doing the special effects left. And so a new dude who is clearly not as talented comes in to do this because this wasn't supposed to be the original ending of the movie.
Right.
And so even
all
in
that stuff with Jimmy Olsen and the dam was all last minute thrown together.
It's so bad, and you just get little things like that. But the going back in time, the science loving part of me like cringes hard because he murdered everyone on Earth.
Yeah.
Because when he when he stopped the Earth's rotation and moved it backwards, the oceans just killed everyone.
Can you imagine you had just given birth and then all of a sudden you start like, wait a minute, why am I pregnant again? No!
It's like, man, there's that is like wrong on so many levels. You're like, this isn't even a good adaptation of time travel as a bad mechanism to make up, mistakes in the movie. So, but as the internet has pointed out again and again and again, why doesn't he just do that for everything at that point?
Every single thing.
Yeah.
And to be 100% honest, I mean, this is right after I just, was like, it's so cute watching them interview on the balcony and everything. Does he really care about her that much?
Mm-hmm.
Of all people. I mean, there's a lot of things going on and a lot of problems that have happened.
I'm sure she's not the only one that was crushed during that explosion.
But that person that he's, romantically involved with, like, he loses his mind and decides to forego all of his, like, rules of being a superhero to save her. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I believe it. But
yeah, I have a problem with the passage of time in this movie.
It's rough.
Because it goes all the way to the beginning, from the council meeting with Krypton, and they're telling, well, first off, Marlon Brando saying the line, Krypton will be destroyed within 30 days, if not sooner. Doesn't within 30 days mean
sooner?
30 days or less?
Yeah.
But anyway, and then they tell him, well, we've spoken, and he agrees, neither me nor my wife will leave the planet. How much time then passes? Like, had he already had Kal-El? Because he doesn't mention his son.
Mm-hmm.
And he's clearly like 18 months old when they put him in that pod.
And if it was 30 days or sooner, for it to be essentially what appears to be later that afternoon.
After tea.
Yeah. And then the same thing happens with Smallville, is we see Clark clearly in high school as the water boy or whatever. And then after Jonathan dies, which is that same day, they have a funeral. So you figure, okay, a couple days have passed. Then he finds the gym. You're like, okay, maybe another day or two has passed. And then he goes, hey, Mom, I'm going to leave.
Yeah, I'm out.
And she's not like, you got to finish high school. Like,
like, okay, but curfew is 10.
So are we to believe Clark does not have a high school diploma?
Which makes
you find out in the third movie that he does. Like, he graduates.
There's a lot of problems when you start bringing in the sequels.
It makes the landing a journalist job all the more impressive if he doesn't have high school.
A very high-paying journalist job, apparently.
Journalist job.
But then it's the same thing with the Metropolis stuff. Like, how long has he been Superman? And like Chad's talking about, like, has there been more time for that relationship between him and Lois to have developed to that level? Or again, is he just infatuated with this pretty girl he saw?
So Tim talking about the longer cut. Is any of that explained in the longer cut, Tim? Are there any scenes?
No.
Nothing? Okay. All right.
No, none of that is.
I do remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laramy, because I remember from the first time we talked about this, wasn't like the original script like super long, like it was from the same writer as The Godfather.
Puzo
it was supposed to be like
Mario Puzo.
Yeah, so,
was like 500 and something pages.
500 something pages.
They had to do a lot of cutting just to get it to what it is now. So I'm sure I have a feeling a lot of that stuff was fleshed out better in the original script that would have taken like 4 movies to do, the 10-hour Snyder cut or whatever.
Well, if the guy who wrote The Godfather also wrote the original script, that story took 700 hours to tell. So the first Godfather was a good 600 to 700 hours by itself. So
the other, I'm sure we could pick on it all day, but the other like big plot hole that infuriates me is how does Lex Luthor know that kryptonite is Superman's weakness? There's no logic to this.
It's in his Encyclopedia Britannica.
I mean, he figures out that Kal-El is an alien, right? He's like, Superman's not from Earth. What leap of logic goes, rocks from his planet will weaken and destroy him? It's like...
Because he goes through that explanation. He was like, well, they had to pass through radiation field when they reached Earth. I'm like, how would you know that they reached Earth?
And the same radiation field that the baby went through. And, I mean, it makes zero sense. But anyways.
You just reminded me there's another time issue. When Jor-El is talking to the younger Clark when he first goes into the Fortress of Solitude, he says that Krypton was destroyed what would have been thousands of years ago for you. Mm-hmm. But then later in the interview, as Lex is referring to it, he said that it blew up in 1948.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like... And then took the baby 3 years to get here.
Now that could be another Lois Lane like misprint or misquote. To be fair,
yeah,
like 1348 maybe even
1948 BC.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Mystery solved.
The only other scene, I think we talked about this in the original podcast too, Laramy, is when he has the kryptonite around his neck in the water. Every time I'm like, just duck your head under and let it just fall off. Why are you trying to pick it up over your head? I'm like, you're in water, you can move. Yeah. So that whole scene just
roll.
It just bothers me.
Yeah. So that bothered me too because I was like, so does kryptonite also make him incapable of swimming? Period. Like he's drowning with this in there, so he just loses the ability to float or swim with that. How heavy is kryptonite? Does anybody know what the mass of that is?
Nah.
Okay. It just makes him weak.
Check Lex's encyclopedia. Yeah. It probably has it in there.
I can't because he ripped it apart and threw it around the room. Okay.
And Lex's girlfriend Eve was like totally on board with killing millions of people.
But wouldn't kill her mom.
But
apparently didn't listen to the plan that it was going to where her mom lived.
Right.
Until the very last second. It was like, whoa, wait a second. That's where we're doing this? Oh, my mom lives there.
Yeah. Can I give her a call?
I should do something about this.
And his reaction is kind of like my reaction when you've told somebody 100 times something and then they come to you at the last minute and they're like, but what about this? And you just kind of go like,
No.
Well, then she's like sheepishly hiding behind the statue while he's drowning and like looking at like, oh, I don't know if I want to save you or not.
Do I help you?
Can I?
Can you read my mind
too? only for a kiss will I get in there and help you.
Complete random thing. I want to know how many times they shot her. Well, not her throwing it, but the necklace landing and the way it fell through that gate. Because that shot is beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
Like the way it does it, where the chain goes and where the amulet goes to the center, the chain falls and then pulls the amulet down.
I'm glad you could appreciate that because I was still sitting there like, what? Like, who are these people? Why are they coming to these conclusions? It makes no sense.
But also the fact that Tessmacher has that accurate of a throw too.
Yeah.
She is a woman of many talents.
Clearly.
Yeah, sunbathing underground is one of her best.
So, is that what we're going to call that?
Thank you, Tim.
It makes it very clear that she is a lot smarter than Lex.
Yeah.
Why she puts up with him
I
makes
agree,
no
Bethany.
sense to me.
Yep.
I mean, we did just talk about that. She didn't realize they were nuclear bombing where her mom lives, but I'm just saying.
Still smarter than Lex.
Still smarter than Lex Luthor.
The criminal mastermind.
whose big twist is, I was bald the whole time.
I know, right? What a great reveal at the end. Nobody recognizes him. Nobody recognizes him until he takes the wig.
It is I, Lex Luthor, criminal mastermind.
That's the biggest plot twist.
It's like pulling off the mustache. And,
yeah.
If these
and yet no one notices that Superman and Clark Kent are the same person.
Well, since we've referenced Saturday Night Live a few times, does anyone remember when Terry Hatcher hosted Saturday Night Live?
Yes.
And like they put the entire cast of Saturday Night Live in glasses, and like they would walk up on stage, and she'd be like, "Who are you?" And then they take the glasses off, and Tim, there was just a.
There's another sketch that has done that. It may just been an internet thing, where it's a Superman, and then they end up setting the glasses like down on a table, and she thinks the table disappeared. Like, where did our table go?
Yeah, but then if you see Zooey Deschanel with no bangs, with her hair parted differently and no glasses on, she looks totally different. Mm-hmm. So I believe it.
And of course, Pete Holmes did it as Bad Batman.
That's a good skit too.
Another complete random. Blake, did you like the cat burglar coming in between Superman's legs?
I did enjoy that reference of a cat burglar, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And also doing it like the classic Adam West Batman, where clearly they shot that sideways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Dutch tilt.
A cool shot.
That going back to scenes that stick in my head, that's a scene that I always think of when I'm thinking about the movie. I'm like, just the shot of his boots on the glass. It's a cool shot. So let's talk about the legacy of this movie. Of course, we call it, as I did in the opening, we call it, the granddaddy of them all. Yes, there were superhero stuff before this, but it was mostly television stuff and movie serials. This was the first major motion picture, if you don't count Batman 66, which we don't.
Hold on now.
Well, no, we don't. But what are y'all's thoughts? I mean, I for one, not only is this the movie that really kicked things off. I mean, we talked about it on this podcast before. Superman started it all. Then Batman 89 kicked it into gear. But I like too that, like Chad said, like this movie changed Superman. Mm-hmm. They started drawing Superman to look like Christopher Reeve. The whole idea of the S being the House of L symbol. Yeah, mm-hmm. that didn't exist in the comics. It was this movie that established that. So I'm curious as to what some of y'all's thoughts are. So I'll start with Chad on this one. So what do you say is kind of the legacy of Superman 78?
I mean, you can continue that. So much of the Superman mythology that we have, it's almost easy to forget that there's 40 years of Superman history before Superman the movie. Yeah. So stuff like the look of the technology of Krypton is completely from the movie. None of that is from the comics. It left a lot of stuff there. I think in a good way, it helped the idea that good acting has to be the biggest ingredient. That it doesn't matter if a man can fly if you don't believe that he's got some humanity. And you can't give Christopher Reeve more credit for that movie doing well than you can't overstate it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. The other thing that I think is a huge legacy is it's almost, I don't know why, but people forget that John Williams scored that movie to a T. When you see the Superman symbol, you hum the song. That's it. It's that intrinsic to it. So, I think that he's obviously given lots of wonderful credit for other work he's done. You think about Indiana Jones, you think about all these other things. Those movies were after this movie. Yes, he had just done Star Wars, same kind of time frame.
Star Wars, yeah.
But this was a kind of a turning point in that. They had spent big money on this orchestral masterpiece that is so much part of that movie that they can't exist separately. So I think there are a lot of strange little things that we just sort of take for granted with Superman, because I think it was so different than everything else you saw at that time period. So from effects that, like I was saying earlier, I would believe were from the 90s. You didn't see it done as well again for 20 years. To the soundtrack, the acting. I think all those things are really important and changed cinema totally, not just in the superhero genre.
I agree. I'm gonna co-sign a lot of what Chad just said. But I think it clearly set the tone for superhero movies going forward. Had they not taken it seriously, because going into that, Batman 66 had existed before. We can discount it all we want, but it was clearly just a camp version of Batman. Them taking the source material and saying, let's give it... they didn't follow it too carefully, but they followed it enough that, they took it seriously. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just a funny book for kids that they were making a movie out of. They could have camped it up and really, cheeseballed it up, but they were I think you go to in the last 20 years, you have Jon Favreau taking Iron Man and doing it seriously. I think Favreau doesn't do that if Donner doesn't lay the groundwork, because you can say, I'm a fan of this. I want to do it the way I saw it when I was a kid growing up reading the book. And if we don't have Donner do it first, I don't know if we have Burton in 89 or Favreau in 2000.
I don't think Burton would have been able to pull off Batman in 89 if Superman hadn't set, like you're saying, set that, you and Chad both are saying, setting that tone of, we don't have to be comedic, campy, right. Adam West. But even what you just said, is there anyone, Christopher Reeve, yes, look-wise, is there anyone before Christopher Reeve? As iconic as Adam West is, I do not picture him or hear him when I read Batman comics.
Nope.
Even if I'm reading some of the 60s stuff, I still do not hear Adam West's voice. Christopher Reeve, to me, is the first, this is a person I associate with this character in my mind. But Blake, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I don't know if I can say anything as eloquently or more so than Chad and Nicholas have already stated. Seeing it for the first time, I can certainly see a lot of parallels and a lot of direct lines to what we see in superhero movies today. Namely, as Nicholas said, Iron Man. You took something that could have been very campy and made it. You took the source material seriously and you respected it. And you put something on screen that can be enjoyed by both adults and children alike, save the child nudity. Don't watch that part. But it's something that is for all ages. And I think there is a lot of kudos and credit and snaps for some of our missing panelists to be given that this movie pulled that off and carved a pathway for what we have today.
Quick question to you, Blake. What were your thoughts on the opening of the movie? We haven't talked about that. The comic book.
Yeah, so I thought it was an interesting way to introduce it. A little meta, a little fourth wall breaking-ish. But I didn't mind it because I kept trying to tell myself while I'm watching this movie. It's almost like watching Uncle Ben die in Spider-Man over and over and over. I know, he leaves Krypton. Or Krypton, however we want to pronounce it. I know that his parents aren't smart enough to build a ship to go with him. I know they stay behind. So to get past all that and looking at it through the lens of this is the first time a lot of people are seeing this on screen, I thought it was great to introduce it with the comic, to tie those fans into this is what you've known. Let us take you to what you're going to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my thought, is the same thing like Nicholas and Chad were saying. It to me, that helps make that connection. Mm-hmm. Hey, we are going to bring this comic to life in a respectful way. And I totally agree with that. I do have another question for you, Blake.
Yep.
So you've got all these problems with the repetition of seeing Uncle Ben die and the intelligence behind the kids. You know where I'm going.
I already know where you're going.
Yeah, but you don't have any problem with the Waynes.
Oh, I have a massive problem with watching them die over and over again. Yes, we don't.
Or choosing, you know what? Let's go out the back door to this theater on something that is referred to as Crime Alley. Let's.
You know, you don't get
in the dark.
You don't get to choose your.
With our child.
You don't get to choose your exits unless you do choose your exits. You know, it's just common sense. No, there is that thing where when we start and we reboot, or when we're starting anew, you have to show the origin. I don't know that we're at that point anymore in comic book movie history. I think some of us on this panel may be getting close to a little burnout on them because of the repetition of things. So I
just of the Wayne's death. That's all.
No, it's a lot of stuff, but that's for another podcast. Yeah, the Wayne's death specifically, we can do without. I'm okay admitting I can do without that.
Bethany, how about you?
I have to agree. I don't want to harp too much on it because, you know, Chad, Nicholas, and Blake, they've all said it so well. They took source material that a lot of people loved. They took it seriously and they presented it seriously in a way that was fun and enjoyable and has set a tone that I think we still see reflected in Marvel movies. Maybe not some of the more recent ones, but just it's a fun tone, but they clearly love the source material. And it's building this beautiful world with characters that are people on top of being superheroes.
Yeah, and you just brought this into my head. I'm going to say I think that's one of the reasons why the DCEU didn't work. Mm-hmm. Is because the connection that a movie like this made, I will even say the connection that Batman 89 made with comic book fans, Snyder, and again, I know you can go back in our archives. We absolutely did love the Justice League Snyder cut. But when you really break it down, Snyder did not understand the DC Comics. I don't know how much of that I could also blame on maybe David Goyer as well, because he had, his say in the script. Because, but Christopher Nolan has even, when it came to Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan said that Superman 78 was an inspiration for him and the way Donner approached that movie. And so I agree with that. But Tim, saved you for last because you are the one that started this with me 100 episodes ago. So I'm curious not only what you think the legacy of Superman was, but have any thoughts changed since we did this 4 years ago?
Well, because I didn't say it at the beginning and Blake did it so well. Congratulations on 100 episodes. Glad to be there for the first one and even more glad to be here for the 100th episode. So thanks again for bringing me back for the podcast. And everybody's said so many great things. I'm not going to repeat everything, but I think they all brought valid points. The only thing I'm going to say is remembering that Richard Donner is the one that directed this movie just once again shows what a great director he was. And even we've discussed in our panel we did about 80s directors. He was probably one of the most eclectic or he was a director that did not want to be pigeonholed to a certain genre. So, he'd done The Omen, and this was his second film after The Omen. So you're taking two very different, stories. And then, of course, after this, he did Goonies, he did Lethal Weapon. He's done other great stuff after that. But, we've all said he took it seriously, and we've talked on my podcast and Laramy's podcast, we talked about the Donner cut versus Superman 2 and what it could have been and what it was. Which, if we can be honest, Superman 2 could have completely unraveled or undone what Superman, the movie, had begun, because they,
very true.
What it could have grown to become even greater. But I just want to honor Richard Donner for making the movie as good as it was, and that the studio trusted him. We know the issues he had with the producers, but yeah, but
they should have trusted him.
Yeah. But thankfully he was the one that the project was put into his hands, and he, I think, did the best that anybody could have done with it. And like you said, with no template to go off of to say, oh, well, what's a superhero movie going to be like? Well, it's definitely not a bagel or a green suitcase. So he had enough foreknowledge to see what it could become, and probably didn't, taking a lot of chances. I'm sure that he didn't know would pay off or not, but inspired so many other great projects. Some better than others, but definitely launched a genre that we still love and adore and look forward to new versions and variations of these characters even now and going forward.
So just to bring up another, and we can make this a quick conversation, but you're talking about Donner and Donner's vision and the fact that he was, just like Christopher Reeve, relative unknown at the time, and then would later become a bigger director. Do any of y'all know that Steven Spielberg was almost the director of this movie?
Did read that.
Yeah, and the only reason he wasn't was because Jaws was so big that Steven Spielberg pretty much became instantly unattainable by the Salkinds.
Hot commodity.
Do you think? Again, we can make this a quick conversation. We don't have to elaborate, but do you think Spielberg's version of Superman would have been as iconic?
I think it would. I mean, it's Spielberg. It would have been a different version. It would have probably like I said, it would have been different.
A lot more close-ups.
But I do think, yeah,
profiles.
But probably less child nudity. I would hope. And then
it's just the simple fact of spaceflight. It weighed too much to put underwear in that pod. I mean, gosh, guys.
So wait,
he's wrapped in that
when he was
blanket.
A baby. Yeah. So when he was a baby, what happened?
You can
with all the bodily functions.
Yeah.
No, there's a. I mean, he had to eat.
That space pod's probably disgusting by the time he got there.
Yeah.
It disintegrated not because of the atmosphere change. It was just so nasty.
That's the meteor. That's the piece of kryptonite that flies into a Baba.
Fire.
It's his own poop come back to kill him.
I mean, it would have been a very interesting take. Spielberg doing Superman. I mean, I don't know. I mean, given what Donner went on to do, it's so hard to kind of separate those two in my head. A lot of times, anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it would have been different, but I don't know how different.
Yeah, because you got to think Spielberg. I don't have his filmography in front of me. This would have been right before he did E.T. So,
well, I think
I don't know what he.
You were mentioning why he didn't do Superman. He had already agreed to do Close Encounters, so he's filming Close Encounters like while they're making Superman. So. Yeah.
That's it, because I remember there's a quote, because people talk about Star Wars, Close Encounters, and Superman kind of being a revitalization of the sci-fi era, and Salkind actually being quoted as, "I knew nothing about Star Wars while we were making this movie. Star Wars knew nothing about us. I knew nothing about Close Encounters. They knew nothing about us." And I find that funny, but yeah, it's this was, I would say. Because, and this is going to probably step on Tim a little bit, and not in a bad way. I'm talking about like stepping on your 80s flick flashback stuff. But the late 70s, early 80s was a turning point for a lot of genres. I mean, this is when John Carpenter did Halloween, and then Sean Cunningham does Friday the 13th. And so you got the horror movie coming through. This is where you had Saturday Night Live, so you had John Landis, you had all these comedic performers that were coming through. I mean, The Jerk with Steve Martin,
National Lampoon
making a turn. National Lampoon making a turn in the way comedic movies were being done. You were getting away from the farce that comedic movies were more, and you're going more towards the parody and the. It's kind of rough saying this when you are talking about movies like Airplane and stuff, but you're getting a little bit more intelligent comedy, I would say. But just going on, just to throw that in there. But Tim, what's your thoughts on if Spielberg had directed it?
Well, Harrison Ford probably would have been Superman.
That's
probably a given there.
Would that have been because of Spielberg or because of Kathleen Kennedy?
Either one, yeah. But I mean, he was Indiana Jones, so that's why he was going to be Superman. I kind of agree with Nicholas. I think it would be different, but those are two directors that I see have a very similar, maybe not style, but they have similar leanings in how they tell stories. So it would be different. I think it still would have been iconic, but yeah, I don't know. Donner did such a good job. I just don't. I don't know how. Yeah, I prefer.
Yeah. Again, it's like trying to, like Nicholas said earlier, we talked about the other actors to play Christopher Reeve. It's hard to imagine them because we're so used to them from other roles. And again, it's hard to picture anyone but Christopher Reeve as this Superman.
I mean, I do confuse Lethal Weapon and Schindler's List all the time. Those are very similar movies. So,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Let's not forget though that Spielberg did make 1941 around this time.
True.
So it could have gone bad.
Yeah, I don't think, and I don't think Spielberg would have put up with the Salkinds. He probably would have walked off before. I think Donner had a little more patience.
Would he have put up with Brando?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Brando would. I don't know if Brando would have gotten away with what he got away with.
Right.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
Hey, Laramy. I love your show. I love moving panels. I cannot believe it is episode 100. It's mind-blowing. And congratulations, that's a huge milestone. I'm so sorry that I could not be there to talk Superman with you guys. It's one of my all-time favorite superhero movies. I mean, it sounds cliche, because it is, but it really made me believe that a man could fly. The effects were fantastic. Richard Donner really knocked it out of the park. Christopher Reeve will forever be my Superman. I don't care how good Corin Sweat is. I don't care how good any of the other guys were, Dean Cain or Tom Welling or Brandon Routh or any of them. It doesn't matter, because for me, it's always going to be Christopher Reeve. He had the look. He could transform between Clark Kent and Superman in such a way that you just did not expect them to be the same person. And you knew it was. You knew exactly it was the same guy, but it didn't seem like it. He would hunch over. He would really change the pitch of his voice. His mannerisms would be more awkward and jerky. Just everything was completely different from when he was Superman, and he had a deeper register in his voice. He stood up straighter. His chest was out a little bit more. So he had confidence, and it really seemed almost like they were two different people. And I just think it's amazing. I know there's a story that, and I don't recall who it was, but I know that there was a producer that saw Christopher Reeve walk by with his Superman suit on, and, there were throngs of women and fans, just adoring fans, just trying to get his attention. And one time after the shoot, it was a scene where he was Clark and he walked by and no one knew that it was him, which just goes to show that even though we think it might be dumb that you can't tell a person without their glasses on, it just goes to show how great of a job Christopher Reeve did at being Superman. Do I wish Lex Luthor was more of the 80s and 90s Lex Luthor, more of the businessman evil genius, rather than the real estate swindler that he was, that Gene Hackman played? Yes, I do. But having said that, Gene Hackman is a phenomenal actor, and he killed that role. He just did the perfect job as Lex Luthor. I loved Ned Beatty as Otis. I thought he brought some comic relief. And every time I'm looking at a small town, I'm driving to see my folks and I pass through a small town, I always think, Otisburg. But Miss Tessmacher was great. Lois Lane, Margot Kidder, she did a fantastic job as well. And I really believed that she and Christopher Reeve got along well. I don't think they actually did on set, but you believe it on camera that Lois and Clark have this energy, this chemistry there. So the cast was phenomenal. Jackie Cooper, of course. I always loved the intro, even though as a kid I didn't understand it. But with Jor-El and the three Kryptonians, Zod, Ursa, and Non, that setup for the whole second film, I thought was brilliant. The whole structure of the ice castles, the crystals and everything when he builds his Fortress of Solitude, the whole technology. I mean, just building a technology off of crystals, that's unheard of. Nowadays, when you see futuristic societies, you definitely don't see anything like that. It's always some sort of technology or some advanced technology, but it relates to something that we've seen. And so using this crystal-based thing it was mind-blowing. And then the whole reflective suits, what they did really made it seem otherworldly. And Marlon Brando as Jor-El, it's Marlon Brando. You can't top Marlon Brando. So the legacy of Superman the movie, I think, cannot be beaten. It is the gold standard for superhero films. And yes, it's cheesy. It's from its time. It's from the 70s, of course. But what it did for special effects, what it did for superhero movies literally cannot be overstated. It really made you believe that the impossible could be possible. I love this film. I wish I could have been there to talk about it with you. Unfortunately, illness and work and various other factors just got in the way. And so I apologize, but I'm glad that I can at least include this little brief rambling on the perfection that is Superman the movie. I'm not sure, as a physicist now, I'm not sure about turning back time by just changing the rotation of the Earth. But you know what? As a kid, who cares? It works. So on that note, I'm going to end it and say, later, dudes.
All right, well, this is our 100th episode, and although we did the show a little bit different, we can't do an episode of Moving Panels without a Bag It, Stack It, or Trade It. We've pretty much given all of our thoughts, so we don't have to go into detail here, but we can at least give our vote as to whether it is a Bag It, Stack It, or Trade It. And Blake, since you saw it for the first time, I will let you give us our first decision.
Ups, downs, hits, misses. It's a stack it for me.
Okay. Tim?
You gotta bag it. It's the first of its kind, and just as being the first, it's worthy of being preserved and treasured.
Bethany?
I'm gonna stack it.
Okay. Chad?
So, it's not my favorite movie. It definitely, it has some pretty evident flaws, pretty quickly seen. If it was just me in a vacuum watching this movie, like Blake, for the first time, I honestly, it's a stack it. I'm in a fourth category this for the first time ever. This is so important to my friend. This becomes a gifted. I've got to put this in plastic. It's got to get rated, the whole 9 yards, and go to my friend who, it has influenced his view on movies in general to such a point that we have this podcast. We get together to talk about this stuff, so it's a gifted.
Nice.
That's a really cute idea, and way to one-up me. Thanks, guys.
Try to follow that,
All right,
Nicholas.
How about you?
All right.
Follow that.
Yes. If I was just movie alone, it's stack it. But I can't divorce everything else that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've talked about this in a couple other movies that you and I have done. The influence that this movie had on everything going forward, not just of superhero movies, but definitely superhero movies. It moves it from just this. From stack it to bag it because of what it does and what it did. It's the movie itself. If I'm just talking about the quality of the movie and how does it hold up, yeah, it's a stack it. But with everything that it comes with and everything that it did, it has to move it up to bag it.
And I don't think I have to give mine. Mine is going to be 100% bag it. As much as stuff like Chad talked about, as much as, even what Nicholas just said. The legacy this movie has, even if it wasn't personally a thing for me, as y'all have talked about, and as anyone who's listened to the podcast knows, or if you've seen my TikToks, I'm sitting in a room surrounded by Superman stuff as I do this. Bethany gave me a Christopher Reeve figure, as a wedding present.
Wedding gift.
That was my wedding gift. So yes, there is the personal stuff for me, but like Nicholas said, and Chad said, the fact that this gave us this genre that is what this podcast is. And it's the reason why I wanted to make it my first episode. This was the movie that started it all. And so again, yes, it's a bag it for me, both personally though, but also, just as a film. It's not without its flaws. We've talked about them. I've talked about them. I don't think a perfect movie exists though. So I don't knock it down to a stack it just because it has flaws. I'm still looking at it, and I do, as I've talked about through this episode, I do still try to look at it as this is a movie from 1978. So even if I am Blake and watching it for the first time in 2024, I am watching it as this is a movie from 1978. And so I'm not comparing it to today's standards. But honestly, even if I were to compare it to today's standards, I still think this rises above a lot of movies. And so it is just 100% a bag it for me. I don't know what else to say. But there you go.
Well, now you've got 2 copies because Chad gave you his. So congratulations.
Well, one to bag and one to play.
One's in a bag, one's in graded now. That's pretty awesome.
So you're implying I only own 1 copy of Superman the movie
in this podcast, in this phantom zone of moving panels, you have 2 copies now, and I want to do like the trapped in a screen thing, like they did. Real quick.
That should be the podcast. That should be the podcast covers all the co-hosts.
You want me to do just all of us?
Out of curiosity, how many copies of Superman the movie do you own?
He's got to count.
Oh, wow.
He's got to count.
So I wasn't expecting to be asked that. So I know I've got 3 box sets.
Oh, 3 box sets?
Yeah.
God, okay.
Yeah. I know I have 3 box sets. I don't think I ever owned it individually, though, to be honest. I think the first time I owned it was the DVD box set that has the 4 Christopher Reeve movies.
Then they released it on Blu-ray.
Which included the Donner cut of it. And then they released it for the 4K Ultra, but it also had the Blu-rays in it.
HD, DVD.
Digital.
Yeah. And then, I also have it digitally, so I can pull it up on my Movies Anywhere. So if you count that one, I'll say it's 4. I'll say it's 4.
It's not awful. It's not intervention level stuff.
It's not as...
Because like Chad said, I never owned it on VHS because I don't think I could ever find it on VHS. Like the first time I owned it was on DVD. Well, there you have it. There was our 100th episode of Moving Panels. Again, our 100th review episode. I don't want anybody arguing with me that technically we've done like 200 episodes because of the one-shots, but it's the 100th review episode. It's the ones that we number. So this is number 100. Excited to do it, and right here, right before June, right before my birthday. So it was kind of fitting for it to land here. But we will be coming back to follow this up with Supergirl, actually. With me and Nicholas are going to talk about Supergirl. Because we've also been doing the Superman movies in order. And Tim and I did 1, 2, and 3. Technically, Supergirl came out next. So Nicholas is going to join me for Supergirl. And then Tim or some unfortunate soul is going to have to watch Quest for Peace with me. So we'll see how that lays out. But it was nice to go back and rewatch and redo Superman the movie, the one that started it all, not only for the superhero movies in general, but for this podcast. So it was great, and it was a pleasure having 5 of my wonderful co-hosts to join me with this for a roundtable discussion. I had a blast, guys. I hope you did too.
Same here.
Yes, very much so. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for joining us throughout these 100 episodes, and we hope for 100 more. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page. It's the 100th episode, and we're going back to discuss Superman the movie. On this episode of Moving Panels,
I'm Bethany.
What?
You looked at me like you needed something from me. What do you want from me?
Yo, leave that in. No. That is going to throw so many people for a loop, dude. You gotta leave that in there.
You looked at me like you looked at me like I was supposed to say something.
You did give like the look like you were waiting for her to take over, Larry. I'm not gonna lie to you.
No, I did. I will admit, I looked at her because I was expecting she was about to say something,
and she did. Oh, she delivered.
I was like, "What are you about to say?"
Have you ever heard of the actor's nightmare where you're put out on stage and you're supposed to know your lines?
Was that what just happened?
That's what I just lived.
Look, I'm gonna start calling Bethany Amazon because she delivered right there, just like bam.
Hilarious.
Did it?
Oh my gosh.
I love
I hate you guys.
Yeah, I know. Right?
And for moving panels, that's
yeah. Rick, are you just saying you love things in the room? Yeah, I'll see you on the other side of the page after that.
We got it.
All right, we're good.
I'm Tim, and I like to party.
Yeah. I can't look at Bethany now.
She can't get it together. Nope. Oh.
I'm Bethany. Shut up, you guys. I hate you all.
Moving panels roll call.
Yeah.
That's what I thought you wanted.
The best opening that's ever opened.
The hard part's gonna be finding where we all trailed off laughing to end it, though. Like this.
Yeah,
we got to like clap.
I can just fade out.
Again.
I can just fade out.
Oh man.
I know. Deep breath. What's the trick to stop from laughing on stage, everyone?
I don't know. Ryan Gosling doesn't know what it is because he.
Yeah, I love it, dude. The SNL, that was one of the best SNL episodes in a long time.
Yeah, it was.
I never knew Ryan. I never realized how much he really does look like Beavis.
Really,
like,
and truly.
He just really does.
He committed to the 5 o'clock shadow for every sketch, though.
Yeah, he did.
He sure did.
All right.
Sorry, Laramy. Proceed.
No. I'm trying to calm myself down too.
It's not your fault, Tim. It's Bethany's fault, obviously.
I still blame Laramy. He looked at me like I was supposed to say something.
Yeah, he did give her the lead-in pause there.
Okay, we're all good.
I think so.
All right, let's give this a shot.
Are we starting over? Am I supposed to say?
No. We'll keep that in. I'll either keep it in or I'll add it at the end as a blooper.
She said, "Am I supposed to say anything?"
All right, you good?